In today's video, we're going to play around the NHL Draft Lottery Simulator since we haven't done so since the NHL season was suspended and get to see who wins to pick first overall. We'll discuss that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're doing another NHL Draft Lottery simulation based on the final standings when the NHL season was suspended. Now, if you follow this channel, well, you know that we've done this periodically, usually every few weeks or so as the standings have changed. Clearly the standings won't be changing anymore. We may still do this again in the future just to see a different outcome until we know further information on when the Draft Lottery is actually going to be taking place. Now, it was originally scheduled for, I believe it was April the 9th is when they were intending to do so, which was early into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but with everything being suspended, we're still awaiting further clarification and information on when that now may be conducted. Obviously, they're going to want to wait a while because they don't know if they're going to be able to resume any games or not as of yet, so it's going to be definitely much later than originally anticipated. So, of course, today we're looking at the top 10 picks. So after I ran the simulator, we're going to do a mock draft here. We're going to start at 10 and go all the way through 1 and see how this played out. The number 10 pick belongs to the New Jersey Devils, courtesy of the Arizona Coyotes, who they obtained that pick in the Taylor Hall trade. They would be drafting Russian goaltender YAROSLAV ASKAROV, who is the top-rated goaltender in this 2020 NHL draft. He's had a pretty solid year over in Russia. Had a bit of a shaky tournament at the World Juniors, but you can still tell he's got a ton of potential. ASKAROV certainly has the ability to be a franchise goaltender down the road. Like in last year's draft, in the 2019 draft, we had Spencer Knight be that same type of goaltender. And obviously, goalies usually do take a little bit longer to get to the NHL and become a starter than many other positions. And it's not quite clear what Askarov's intentions are for playing in the KHL after being drafted, but he still has a ton of potential and would be a great fit in New Jersey. Next up, picking number 9, we have the Chicago Blackhawks. So that tells us the first 2 spots. Neither one of them won the lottery, so there's no change in the order of picking here. They would select finish forward Anton Lundell. Now, of course, Lundell's a really well-rounded two-way forward with a great vision, great puck handler, excellent passer, and really can play in all situations. Unfortunately, his season was cut short due to injuries this year. Obviously, he did not get to play in the World Juniors, and with all the leagues around the world basically being suspended at this point, it's kind of unfortunate he didn't get a lot of time to really kind of reevaluate where he should be in the draft. I thought Lundell might be able to have one of those second half finishes to really push himself way back up the draft rankings here. He was ranked higher, but a lot of his other players kind of grabbed some more attention while he was on the shelf, but clearly he'll still be an impact player for any team that's lucky enough to draft him. Next up, picking at number 8, we have the Buffalo Sabres. So that drops them down 1 spot where they normally would have been picking based on the standings. So that tells us somebody down that way have actually moved up here. Now, the Buffalo Sabres would then select Ottawa 67's forward Marco Rossi, who's a little bit of a smaller size center at 5'9", born in Austria, but was putting up tons of points for the 67s this year, really tearing up the Ontario Hockey League. He's a really smart player, solid playmaker, but has the ability to finish as well. Been a really steady riser in the draft rankings this year. Like I said, he was having a tremendous season for the Ottawa 67s. Is one of these and other stories here of cases of teams that might not be able to finish what they started this year. They were one of the teams likely heading for a potential OHL championship, a possible Memorial Cup appearance, and could have been the top team overall in Canada. They were having a tremendous year, and it's unfortunate Rossi, who was a big part of that, wouldn't get to show what he's made of here any further. But during the time he did play, Rossi really pushed his way up the rankings here and certainly earned himself into the top 10 conversation. Now, next up at number 7, we have the New Jersey Devils. This is their own pick. Of course, the other one we had was the one from Arizona. The New Jersey Devils at number 7 drops them 1 spot below where they would have been picking based on standings, and they would be selecting from the OHL Cole Perfetti. Now, Cole Perfetti is another very dynamic offensive forward playing in Saginaw, a center iceman. He's very smart, excellent goal-scoring center. He's got a wicked shot. He's, like I said, he's really smart, very creative. Some scouts say they'd like to see him work on his skating a little bit, just to be a little bit more explosive, to give himself some more time and space, something that a lot of these guys are going to have to work on as they move up into the pro hockey ranks. Skating is something that they'll never perfect and can always be working on. Not a coincidence that many NHL teams have skating experts that quite often work on clinics with a lot of their players throughout their offseason as well. But Perfetti's a very interesting offensive dynamo here that would make a big difference in any team. In a team like New Jersey, who's going through a rebuild to build around guys like Hughes and Hischier, he would be another great young player to fit into that mold. Next up, picking at number 6, we have the Anaheim Ducks, who also moves down one spot based on the standings here. The Ducks would then be selecting Swedish forward Alexander HOLTZ. Now, HOLTZ is another very skilled offensive player. He's really a true goal scorer, likely going to be a top 6 forward in the NHL. Very impressive shot, very smart player. He's got great vision. He's certainly a tough player to play against as well, something a lot of other teams have commented on. If he does have any weakness, it would be his skating. Not quite as strong as some of these other guys ranked ahead of him, but it's certainly not a weakness either. Not something you really want to pick upon, but Alexander HOLTZ, who had a really solid World Junior Tournament for an underage player, certainly proven to be a really solid prospect for this year's draft. Next up, picking at number 5 and also moving down one spot based on the standings is the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings have also had a bit of a solid winning streak going right before the season was suspended. They did have a little bit lower spot in the standings, but they were winning 6 straight games before the NHL suspended their season. The LA Kings would select top defenseman of the draft, Jamie Drysdale, who's having a tremendous overall offensive and defensive season. He's an elite skater, a power play quarterback, having an awesome year in the OHL. Clearly had a tremendous year for the World Juniors for Team Canada as well. Lots of offensive upside, but his defensive game did grow and get better this year as well. He has the potential to be a top paired defenseman who can play solidly at both ends of the ice. Like many of their young defensemen that enter the NHL, likely will have to work on the defensive game, but obviously like most young NHL defensemen, it's going to take a little bit of time to be a solid NHL defensive player, but in the interim, it's something that's not a weakness for him. He can play at both ends of the ice and really be an all-around top pair guy. Next up at number 4 is the Detroit Red Wings. So that means they fell 3 spots here. So obviously that's not good news for the Red Wings, who were in last place in the NHL, and they were actually clinched that spot before the season was suspended. They would then select Swedish forward Lucas Raymond, who certainly would be a tremendous asset to the Red Wings. They have a long history of having a lot of success with a lot of Swedish-born players, particularly forwards, but obviously some defensemen as well. They've had a lot of players come over from Sweden and have really solid, long NHL careers, and Lucas Raymond could very well be the next player in that long line of lineage here, but he's a very well-rounded, highly skilled player, exceptional hockey sense, so he's really smart, great speed, got great hands, pretty strong defensively, and a pretty solid two-way player as well. So not a lot of faults in his game. Lucas Raymond was certainly in the conversation for the top 2 or 3 picks earlier on, but obviously some other guys have kind of come along and solidified themselves here, but overall, he's a really solid player. It would be a huge boost to the struggling Detroit Red Wings. Next up, we have the Ottawa Senators. Now, this is the Senators' own pick that they have, that one that belongs to them. That means they actually moved down one spot as well, and they would select German forward Tim Stutzle, who's really worked his way up the ranks this year as well. Like Marco Rossi I mentioned earlier, Stutzle is another player who's really come up the rankings substantially throughout the season. He's got excellent speed, very quick. He's a natural center, but can play the wing as well, and has at times, especially during international play, incredibly high offensive upside. He would be a tremendous asset to a rebuilding Senators team who already has stockpiled a lot of assets, but because of his strong offensive abilities, he was certainly skyrocket near the top of their list of top prospects. And of course, this is not their only pick in the draft. Ottawa also has San Jose's pick, and that pick has not been determined here in this mock draft as of yet, so you know it's in the top 2. So if the Senators are going to be able to grab 2 top prospects, that's really going to substantially enhance their rebuild here, and it's going to take them a big step forward. So we'll see who else they grab here, but Stutzle to the Senators at number 3 would be an excellent choice. Next up at number 2, we have the Montreal Canadiens, who once again in this draft lottery simulation came out incredibly lucky, this time picking number 2. Videos back during a simulation, they actually won the top spot. This time around, they would select Quinton Byfield of the Sudbury Wolves of the Ontario Hockey League, and maybe they could finally get themselves that big, strong number 1 center that they've been looking for such a long period of time. I mean, Byfield has got that big, strong, power forward type of game. He's going to be a very big difference maker for any team that's able to draft him. 6'4", really strong, got a great mix of skill and strength, and said it will really be a solid projected number 1 center iceman. So Montreal would really really truly win the lottery in more ways than one here if they were able to pick that high and get their hands on this top center iceman. So by the process of elimination, you've probably figured out that the San Jose Sharks pick going to the Senators ends up going number 1 in this draft lottery simulation, where they're able to select top prospect in the draft, Alexis Lafreniere. Now, Lafreniere, I'm sure most of you watching this are quite familiar with him. He might be a winger, but he's a winger that teams can build around and has franchise potential all over him. He was putting up numbers in the QMJHL comparable to Sidney Crosby. I'm not sure if he's going to be that high of a level player at the NHL just yet, but he's a very physical, strong power forward type of guy who can take games over and dominate on his own. He's going to be a cross of a couple different NHL players, to a degree. Kind of reminds me, he doesn't have the one-timer that Ovechkin had, but when Ovechkin first came into the NHL, he was playing a very physical brand of hockey, putting up lots of points. He's going to have that type of impact. A different kind of player offensively, but the same sort of impact, at least I think he can be. Lafreniere is going to be a big-time difference maker in a team rebuilding like the Senators. If they could grab him with that one of their picks and have the other one work out to be in the top 3 or 4 as well, which is very likely going to happen, that would be a huge difference to taking this team a big-time step forward in the right direction. So just to quickly summarize the top 10 picks, here's a screen grab from Tankathon.com so you can see how the numbers actually worked out here. Clearly, Tankathon.com is a fun site to play on, especially without not having hockey right now. You can see ASKAROV going 10 to the Devils. You got Lundell 9 to the Hawks. Rossi going 8 to the Sabres. Perfetti at 7 to the Devils. HOLTZ at number 6 to the Ducks. Drysdale going at number 5 to the Los Angeles Kings. Raymond going at number 4 to the Red Wings. Stutzle at number 3 to the Senators. Byfield at number 2 to the Habs. And Lafreniere number 1 to the Senators as well. So clearly this is just a fun exercise. It's hard to say how things will work out, because we'll probably have some more fun with the draft simulator a little bit down the road as well. And hopefully it won't be too long before we get some kind of clarification on when we'll actually get a real draft lottery taking place for the 2020 draft. Let me know your thoughts on this draft lottery simulation and which prospects you're hoping your favorite team gets their hands on at the 2020 NHL Draft. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.